Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with the latest episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by Prize Picks and the Game Time app, and of course, our great folks at CLNS Media. Back with me here on the Jungle Roar pod is the one and only Paul Dehner Jr. Of course, he does a fabulous job covering all things NFL and specifically the Cincinnati Bengals, and he has one of the best podcasts out there in sports, period, and one of the best names for a podcast, The Growler. So you can catch him on his own podcast, The Growler, with Jay Morrison and himself. They've been doing it for a long time. How's your summer going, Paul? Are you well rested?
I think I'm well rested. Yeah, I'm doing okay. We're hanging in there. Fresh back from a vacation, was gone for about a couple of weeks, was able to recharge it. But, I felt empty inside a little bit, Trags, because I hadn't talked to you.
Yeah,
when I don't
likewise.
talk to you in a month, I just feel lost. You're like my North Star. And so I needed you back in my life. And I'm just so happy to be here so that we can just make me you complete me, really.
I am going to offer you direction back into the NFL vibe. How's that?
Okay.
I'll be your North Star. I'm going to offer you the guidance and the tracking you need to get back in an NFL vibe and rhythm for training camp, which, believe it or not, starts next Wednesday. I can't believe it's coming up this fast. July 24th is their first practice in front of, I believe it is, season ticket holders and invited guests. And then July 29th is the first practice that is actually open to the public. But let's get some business out of the way first, and that is, to no one's surprise, Tee Higgins will not be signing a contract extension by the deadline.
Yeah, to the point that it's not news, right?
Yes, I would agree.
To the point that I saw it yesterday and I was like, I don't even need to comment on this. We've kind of done it. We've known this is where it's going to go. Right. I think when he signed right after the end of camp and mandatory mini camp and signed his tag and fully expressed that he would be showing up and you're not expecting to have any issues when he shows up at training camp, you said, okay, here we go. This is it. This is playing the franchise year out, benefit off of the ballooning wide receiver market, and entering free agency potentially in March, and go have a year, right? Go put yourself in position to make the most money you can by having a great year, try to win a ring, and continue to follow the Jesse Bates parallels in terms of the way the Bengals have handled the inability to get this done and use the franchise tag.
Well, I mean, the one area where it doesn't parallel Jesse Bates is the fact that he signed it before training camp. And to me, that's great for Joe Burrow. It's almost as if Tee Higgins was doing a solid for Joe Burrow and the offense, saying, look, I'll try to be on board. I'm going to be on board with you all. I'm going to be ready for the season. I'm going to do everything I need to do to contribute. And obviously, he, as you just mentioned, has his own interests to protect, and everybody knows that. He goes out and has the year that he is capable of having. He's getting a 9-figure contract out of this. No?
Yeah, I mean, if he goes and plays like he has played his entire career and continues to do that, I mean, he's going to be paid like all of these big time receivers have been paid, in that 25+ million per year range, and even maybe more. We'll see what happens with the market and the cap and everything next year, because the way the wide receivers numbers just went up. What happens the next cycle? When the cap goes up in correlation with that. So things are good. Life is good for Tee Higgins. He's going to bank 21.8 this year. He's going to take advantage of a ballooning receiver market very, very soon. And all he's got to do, and maybe this is the big if, is go out there and play like he normally does. And that's about going out there, not playing like he normally does, being the thing. And that is stay healthy, play as close to a full season as you can, and do what you do, and everything should be just fine for him receiving all the monies.
So there are two new weapons that I think will impact him significantly, that I think have the potential of really helping him in terms of getting open, perhaps downfield. I mean, he's already shown the ability as one of the NFL's best competitors at the point at the top point of a catch. He can do that as well as any receiver out there. But I think the addition of Mike Gesicki as the tight end, who can certainly, as you wrote, be a big slot influence, play the big slot, get open in the intermediate and deep parts of the field in between Jamar and T. That's one. And two, obviously, is the rookie Jermaine Burton. My question for you, Paul Dehner Jr., is how do you think each of those players could impact T?
Well, I mean, I just think the more that people have to worry about a legitimate deep to intermediate threat over the middle of the field working out of that slot, which isn't something that they've really had at all in
Right.
recent years. You know, Tyler Boyd hasn't been, that's not his strength. And certainly they've never utilized any of their tight ends in that way, not effectively anyway, hardly targeting that position of the field at all. But now you have not one, but two guys that are different in unique ways to use depending on what the defense is doing that can take advantage of that. And that only opens up things for those deep outside throws to T or to Jamar or whoever. I mean, it just feels like they've never really been able to threaten that deep middle effectively enough to draw those safeties away or have those safeties more concerned about what's happening there and less about what's happening with whatever Tee Higgins is doing. I mean, more threats is good news for T because and the moment that he's left one-on-one and that's the choice the defense makes, we know what Joe Burrow does. He gives his guy a chance. That's like the ultimate Joe Burrow thing. Give me one-on-one with Tee Higgins. Give me one-on-one with Jamar Chase. I'm giving my guy a chance. And we know that can result in big plays because those guys go in.
You wrote, as a matter of fact, on The Athletic in terms of fantasy football X factors going into this season, that Mike Gesicki would be your pick in terms of an X factor that could break out, that could give the Bengals offense a dynamic that they really haven't had. I guess, how do you see Gesicki different from CJ Uzama and Hayden Hurst? I'm not throwing Tanner Hudson in there because I think he was purely a passing receiver, a passing tight end. I don't think he did a lot in the seam, and I think that's pretty evident. But in terms of Uzama and Hayden Hurst, how is Gesicki potentially different?
See, I would argue with that. I would say he's as close to Tanner Hudson as anything, and I mean that in a great way, in the Tanner Hudson plus. Give you Tanner Hudson with higher end skill set to be able to make plays. He is a pass first guy. Like he's not going to, CJ and Hayden didn't give you a ton as a blocker, but he gave you a little more. He was more of a blocker certainly than you're going to have from Gesicki. But what Gesicki gives you in a league where so many of these slots line up and they're 5'10", 180, the ability to take a guy like Gesicki out there who runs like he does. I mean, he runs slot type routes. We had Dan Pitcher on our podcast after free agency and asked him to pick a couple of plays from Gesicki and Zach Moss that he really thought spoke to what draws him to them. And he specifically pointed out the way he runs these slot routes and his length, being able to take advantage of somebody with, pinpoint accuracy in that intermediate range, right? Because he can get to spots with his length against these shorter corners that just it makes it an unstoppable play if you have an accurate quarterback like that. And they happen to have one of the most accurate in football at doing that, taking advantage when that's the opponent. When the opponent is somebody that lines up the 5'10", 5'11", 180 slot, and you can put Gesicki over them and let Joe Burrow go to work is a huge advantage. And then also to be able to throw over top of the linebackers and in front of the safeties up top effectively, where Gesicki can be a guy that can go get it, that can run into those spaces. Another player that's something that CJ really almost never did, rarely did. Occasionally you would see it. Hayden Hurst did some, but not really a ton. It just seems like it's a chance to find explosive plays in the passing game in a different way. And you saw that a little bit from Tanner Hudson. And they found ways to use Tanner Hudson, even though everyone knew when he showed up there last year, he's not going to block anybody. He's out there to be a pass catcher. But yet he was still really effective, and they could get him into good matchups, and he had an awareness of space. I think you look at that and then just add a plus skill set with Gesicki, and I think it excites them that way.
Here's a subject that I don't think has gotten enough conversation in the offseason, and that is, what are the Bengals specifically going to do with their running backs, and how are they going to use them? I mean, I know there's been some conversation, and certainly Chase Brown, who didn't get a lot of touches by Zach Taylor's own admission last year, that's going to ramp up. But how Chase Brown and Zach Moss are going to be implemented this year by Dan Picture, I think, is one of the biggest questions that the Bengals have to answer in training camp in the preseason and early in the regular season, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's something that evolves. I mean, we've seen them shift strategy dramatically midstream. And in fact, they've done that pretty consistently, whether it be with the running game or general offensive philosophy or blocking schemes. I mean, they've done that year in and year out a little bit. So I think they have an idea, but I think mostly you look around the league and you just see so many teams being effective in using multiple guys who – yeah, they can both do different things too. I mean, I think Chase gives you some things that Zach Moss doesn't, and both of them give you things that Joe Mixon didn't. So I think that opens up a little bit of some new stuff that they can do as well. I think you see how it goes. I think they have plans for both of those guys, things they really like with both of those guys, and you view it in a split. So if someone's hurt, you can lean on the other one and just see who's most effective, and that becomes that. But I think you saw one with the way that Chase Brown was so effective in the screen game last year, and that screen game really took off. That's going to be a big part of his role. And, he was tasked with becoming a better receiver this offseason. Zach Taylor said that to him in their exit interview. And I talked to Chase and Andre Yoshivas about this because they specifically went and for the first time in their lives went and sought out a personal receiver coach to work on the absolute ground up fundamentals to become better at that. And you saw it out there in OTAs. They were opening eyes of people being like, whoa, have you seen Chase Brown run routes? He looks like a receiver. Who that was part of the deficiency that they were a little disappointed in the previous offseason with him, that he wasn't more advanced as a receiver. And now he's looking like a real guy because they saw that as the way to get him and that explosiveness and that speed into open space more often. And so to be able to utilize him that way, it could help him take over potentially the third down back role or just some different type of stuff they can do there and use him more as a receiver and maybe have Zach Moss in a different role. I just think there's a lot of different options that they're hoping to develop. And Chase Brown developing himself as a receiver is going to help them in an offense where they are as pass heavy as anybody in football.
Had Dan Horde on this very podcast last week, and the subject of Zach Moss came up, and he pointed out the Hard Knocks offseason session with the New York Giants and their conversations in free agency about the running back position. And the first name that came up, and I didn't know this because I didn't see the episode, was Zach Moss. And the other thing I didn't know Zach Moss, I think this is right, is one of the best rated pass protection running backs in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he did it a decent amount, certainly in his role last year, and can do it. I think, you're wondering about him catching the ball out of the backfield.
Right.
How effective is he going to be that way? But he's had plenty of plays where he's gone and beaten linebackers out in coverage or scored touchdowns catching the ball. And so he's so good out of the shotgun. He's solid in pass protection. That's such a nice weapon to have standing next to Joe Burrow and the way that they like to run this offense. So, I mean, he was certainly a great fit for what they wanted to be, a guy who was happy to play in a role, who's solid out of that shotgun gap downhill scheme and can take on more if you need him to, or can be part of a connection with Chase Brown. I just think he's so versatile that he was just always viewed as a nice fit for what they wanted to be. And yeah, you saw that a little bit in the Giants offseason thing. I saw that too.
I want to turn to the defense real quick, and I think it goes without saying the biggest one-on-one battle or the biggest camp battle that we're going to have focus on is the cornerback, the second corner position between Dax Hill and DJ Turner, and who knows, maybe even throw Josh Newton in there. That might be a stretch, but certainly between Dax Hill and DJ Turner, a pair of Michiganders, Michigan men, that is something the Bengals have to get right coming out of the chute, I believe, if that defense wants to recover to the point where it was in 2022?
I mean, I think it's their biggest concern at this point, maybe on the whole team. I mean, what do we know? What is
Right.
proven about DJ Turner and about Dax Hill right now? I mean, DJ Turner really set a nice foundation and then really fell off last year. Who is he? Who's DJ Turner? In a full second season, is he the guy that gave you all that hope and optimism from the first half, or the guy that made you doubt it all in the second half? I think he hopes that it was just a matter of being worn down at the end of a long year and rookie wall and all that stuff. I think that's his hope, and that's their hope, but that's hope. Dax Hill, what is he? He's playing outside corner for the first time. I mean, it's hope that he has the skill set that can translate, but what is that? It's just hope. That's what they have right now is hope that the jump from year 1 to year 2 for DJ and moving over to corner is going to be more natural and a better fit for those guys. But there's a chance that neither of those work out. There's a chance that neither of them live up to those expectations. And what do you do then?
Bring in a veteran, I guess.
I think at that point, that's the early in camp aspect to me that I'm interested in. Trags is let's play out the first 2 or 3 weeks, and it's looking a little rougher than you thought. You're not seeing quite the jump. There's some of that same error there. Dax Hill is, it's gonna be a journey from safety and nickel all the way to the outside, and you start asking, what are you gonna do? And then there's Xavier Howard. There's a couple of veterans that are out there, and you say, are you going to pull that trigger? Are you going to go in that direction, or are you going to bet on hope and that it's going to come along? That could be a spot that we land in mid-August or maybe earlier. I don't know, and see how they feel about it. But I think it's something that they'll have to consider if they don't feel like they're seeing what they want to see from those guys, because otherwise – they can't go through another year like it can't be like that.
No.
It can't look like it looked back there last year. And this is all under the assumption that your new safety Geno Stone quickly acclimates, that Cam Taylor-Britt lives up to the expectations of being a real number one, which he's not done for a full season. So all of that is kind of swirling. There's just a lot of uncertainty back there, and that number 2 spot is at the tip of the spear.
Granted, it was off-season practices, it was mini camp, but in my observations of Dax Hill and DJ Turner, when I look at those two, I see DJ Turner with quicker skill sets. I see Dax Hill more with instinct. I think DJ Turner has quicker feet on breaks and whatnot. And the reason I'm bringing this up is if you could combine those two, the skill sets that they have, that's what really the Bengals, that would be the ideal corner, correct?
I mean, they're both elite athletes. And so it's just a matter of actually playing the position technique and instinct wise properly in different ways. I mean, Dax obviously being a little bit bigger and stronger and more of a physical type of guy than DJ, who's
I guess that's what I was getting.
Pure athlete.
Yeah.
But I think they both have the athletic skill set to play the position. It's just a matter of actually doing it, right? I mean, that's what it looks like to me. And that'll be, and that's something that theoretically comes in time. And, when we talked to Lou Anarumo at the end of last season, when he was at the end of his rope with young mistakes,
we know what that looks like.
Yeah. But he would bank on the idea of all the jumps that he's seen over the course of his time in the NFL from year 1 to year 2. And just, that's what happens specifically amongst defensive backs. It's just such a tough place to play, and banking on that. And that's fine. And then we talked to Lou Anarumo, we talked to him right after the end of mandatory minicamp. And he said, everything from Dax that they wanted to see over the course of the offseason program, they felt like they did. They felt like he was passing all those tests. He was doing the right things. He was taking air that he was making in his technique early in offseason program and getting it right by the end of it. And that's the stuff that they need to see. Now, how much of it will they see when they get into actual training camp and preseason and things like that? That'll determine his role. But they felt like, and certainly Lou insinuated, that the arrow was pointing up on what they think maybe Dax could end up being out there.
Let me throw another theory out there. let's say that Dax Hill is the slot corner in waiting. Why are you investing all of this for Dax Hill to be the outside corner of the future? And then you maybe stunt the growth a little bit of DJ Turner. Whereas if you promote DJ Turner as that guy and somehow find a Kyle Hamilton role or whatever hybrid role you want to define it for Dax Hill, you see where I'm going here? That that Dax Hill is eventually going to be Mike Hilton anyway. And DJ Turner, those reps are going to mean more to him and in his development at a position that you presume or you assume is going to be DJ Turner's going forward.
You know, it's kind of like a philosophy I have in many aspects of my life, Trags. You know what? Next year guy can worry about that. All right. Tomorrow guy can take care of that problem. I'm talking about the 2024 season.
Yeah.
The 2024 Bengals, they're trying to win a Super Bowl, need a versatile player. Dax Hill can spend one off season and acclimate to slot again. He could do that tomorrow. I mean, that's more of his natural skill set. I don't think you're stunting anything with him by having him go outside.
Well, not Dax, certainly. I'm talking about DJ Turner.
DJ's got to go win a battle. DJ doesn't deserve anything. He didn't earn that spot last year the way that he played the last however many weeks of the season. He opened himself up. And he should expect competition. Like, I don't, nobody's just giving him anything at this point. So he has to go earn it. He needed somebody to compete against him, and Dax Hill is right there to go do that. So I think both of those guys need competition. Both of those guys need to be pushed, and the Bengals need depth at that spot and, depth at slot and a versatile piece. I mean, you can create those roles for Dax down the line if DJ Turner is doing such a great job as your starter or whatever. I don't, you know what? The only thing that could stunt DJ Turner's growth is probably not being pushed, to be honest with you, that he needs to feel like he needs to go conquer something and take that on at this point.
Besides doing one-hand chest presses, lying on the ground, what impresses you the most about Chris Jenkins, and what are you looking forward to seeing from him in training camp as he battles, certainly for playing time and possibly a starter's role on that D line?
Well, I think what beyond sort of his very dynamic, charismatic personality, I'll put that to the side as what he could be as maybe a leader of the defense down the line. As a player, I think you watch him at Michigan and you're really impressed by how he plays the run and makes an impact in the run game as a smaller defensive tackle. I mean, he doesn't fit the profile of run stopping defensive tackle when you think about what DJ Reader or, they draft McKinley Jackson. I mean, some of these bigger guys.
Or his dad. I mean,
or his dad.
Many times
exactly.
He's not his dad.
He's not his dad. He's playing the same position, but he's doing it differently. But it's the strength and leverage that he uses and finds ways to make those plays. Now, does that translate when moving from the Big Ten to the AFC North? When it's a different level of guys pushing on you, can you still hold up and still prove capable of making those plays? He would say yes, I'm sure today, but we don't know. But that to me is what is impressive there, is that you don't use any of the the shots that people would take on him for size against him, because I just think, it does kind of go back to the mutant one-handed Turkish press. I mean, it's this freakish power and strength that he has is what kind of puts him over the top, not necessarily a weight number or being a certain prototypical size that you expect from a run-stopping defensive tackle. He can give you big impact in stopping the run and not look like his dad or DJ Reader.
And he's also not Geno Atkins. We understand that. But he has kind of that explosiveness in the line that I think I'm excited to see what he does with that, because, when you talk about a guy that has that kind of God-given strength and ability and works at it also, I should say that, I want to see if he can apply that at the NFL level, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think he's an exciting player for them, and he's going to be really important to their defense because you don't want. I mean, you don't want Sheldon Rankins playing 800 snaps.
No.
You don't want BJ Hill playing anywhere near the amount of snaps he played last year. You want both those guys in rotational roles. And to really do that, you need to have Chris Jenkins playing really the same amount as those two. I think you want the idea is those three guys taking those two spots, and really those three spots when you look at the way that Lou Anarumo likes to line up that defense. Sometimes maybe McKinley Jackson's playing a part in that role. I don't know. But, I mean, however they want to use it, I think you would be thrilled. And the ideal scenario on his board would be, 600, 600, 600. But from those three snaps across the board,
Right.
something in that area for the season to keep everybody fresh, everybody rotating through. And it means that everybody's making some kind of an impact, and you can use them a little bit more situationally. So I think that's probably ideal, but that is dependent on Chris Jenkins, making good on some of the potential as a second-round pick.
You know what I'm going to do after this podcast is over?
What?
I'm going to listen to the Growler.
There you go.
Bengals' favorite games.
Yeah.
And I'll give you mine, and I do want to get a tease on what yours is if you're willing to be forthcoming. Well, it's already out there. I don't see why you wouldn't. My favorite game, Bengals in Bengal history, is the AFC Championship 3 years ago.
Yeah.
The one that sent them to Super Bowl 56 for this one reason. It's the most unexpected Bengal result that I can recall in my lifetime. I never thought at 21-3 down on the road in that environment, they had any chance of coming back and winning the game, and they did, to go to the Super Bowl in overtime.
Yeah, we kind of touch on that. So yeah, I've started a new kind of podcast series kind of within the Growler, and that is, it's called My Favorite Game. I have a guest come on and they tell me what their favorite game is, and we discuss the intricacies of the game, the big picture legacy. And Dan Horde was our first guest, and he picked the wild card game from that year, the Bengals and the Raiders. It's up now if you want to go listen to it. But it's really about that playoff run, and that night being special in its own unique way for the city of Cincinnati. But that playoff run, it's all the type of stuff that's just never going to be replicated, which is what I love about that time and that run. And each of those games in their own way were unique. But it's the fact that, and I remember writing about this after the AFC Championship game that year, of it'll never, as Zach Taylor kept saying, it's never going to be like this again. This is a young team that they believe and still believe that we'll be back to this moment many times and be in Super Bowls and AFC Championship games, but it'll never feel like that. It'll never be the breakout year. It'll never be the one that came from out of nowhere. That was the plucky young kids that saw it all come together. I mean, that is what made it special for the city and for the entire franchise, just because it was 31 years since they'd even won a playoff game. And yet here they were a few weeks later taking out the king of the castle and Patrick Mahomes in his house. And it's an easy one. The fun part about this series is I want to challenge. I want to find guests that go to places that we don't think about. That's an easy place to start. And I think most people would probably have that. My goal is going to be to find some guests that have favorite games that are ones that maybe you don't think of, or they're unique to them for some reason, and explore those and some of the legacy of some nights. So I'm really excited about where that series is going to go. As mine, I don't have, maybe at some point in the series I'll pick mine and do it. But I have weird games that I like for different reasons. Like I some of my favorite games were losses for the Bengals. I have referenced many times a game in Miami from 2013, a Thursday night game where Cam Wake had a walk-off safety. And it was a wild game, a Giovanni Bernard run, a crazy pick six by Brent Grimes. It was just an insane Thursday night game. It came in the wake of Jonathan Martin. Like, everything about it was insane, and I'll never forget it. It was Halloween. Geno Atkins got hurt. Like, it's just one of those games where that's the type of stuff that sticks out to me sometimes for the weird nature, but it's hard to beat everything from 2021. I would probably be with Dan on that, where I would say that Raiders-Bengals game would be the tops in terms of watching something special happen.
Right.
But I think there's lots of other games for unique reasons that I've enjoyed just as much.
Yeah, I mean, that is a series I could literally listen to and talk about for on and on and on. I'll give you an obscure one and then I'll let it go.
Okay.
And maybe not so obscure to a lot of Bengal fans, the Chip Miller game. Because
Chip Miller, yeah, sure. Final week of the
was
season off the upright.
88. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking the Bengals are going to have to go on the road. They're going to get screwed just by losing that game. And they would have had, if I'm recalling correctly, they would have had to go to Buffalo and play the AFC Championship game there instead of the Bengals beating the Bills 21-10 the next week, or in the AFC title game. But yeah, that game just had so many swings and such an unexpected ending. And to your point, I think any game that the Bengals have been in, and there have been countless number of them, where there is the element of the unexpected at the end, to me, that's what sticks out. And that's a great series. I just think it's a great idea, and I just wanted to promote it for you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to expanding it outside of the Bengals because I think there's so many fun games in Cincinnati sports that people have unique memories of and that have unique legacies for, that are fun to dive into, kind of how it's all played out and go down memory lane a little bit on what happened. And I like, connecting it to the current clubs, whether it be the Bengals, and there's so many things that you connect to this current team that resonate from what happened in 21, and you can say that across a bunch of different pro teams and college teams here in the city. So I'm excited about it kind of continuing as we go forward, and we're gonna have some fun with it, that's for sure.
What are you doing for the next couple of days or next week to get ready for camp? Are you gonna rest up, or you got anything that you're
I'm doing this to get my, you're the Rhythm Throws podcast, like you said earlier on. Like, I'm getting my rhythm down, and you're like, you're a 7-yard slant against air. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to talk to you, but it gets me back into my football mode, like you said. So, but I'm spending some time right now. I'm diving into some of these, analytical almanacs and breakdown season previews. Warren Sharp has one. Football Outsiders, or I guess used to be Football Outsiders. Almanac is out too. PFF previews. I'm just kind of sifting through those and putting some of my favorite nuggets in there together, because those people spend so much time doing the research on that. And there's some interesting stuff to take. I'll be doing probably my Bengals war that I like to do every year, which is wins above replacement. And it's not about who's the best player. It's who can they least afford to lose.
Yes.
Because there's so many positions where the depth is an issue, okay? Well, it's not as big of an issue to lose Zach Moss if you can turn to Chase Brown. It is a pretty big issue to lose Cam Taylor-Britt when you don't even know who the number 2 corner is. So I think looking at the Bengals wins above replacement, how the roster is currently structured in terms of talent and depth and where they really have to have guys show up, that's a fun one to do every year. The fan survey is out now, I wrote up on the results of that, which is always interesting, and you can kind of see the signs of discontent and nerves showing themselves after last year amongst the fan base. And so it was fun to sift through all those results, but all this stuff to kind of set the foundation for where it goes when we start. Hey, 1 week from today, you know what I'm going to be doing?
Turtle soup.
I'm going to be looking at the mock turtle soup, considering how many spoonfuls I'm willing to take down this year. I think I'm going to finish it again. I'm on a nice streak. I've finished it. I'm willing to do it.
5
spoonfuls.
I'm usually at 5 spoonfuls, and I've had enough.
And then that's enough. But hey, it's this time next week. We're mock turtle souping, baby. We're almost here. We're almost home.
I cannot wait. I truly cannot wait. It's one of the most enjoyable times of the year when I get to see everybody's face, and I'm tired after about 2 hours of seeing and glad handing everybody, and then we're on to the heat and banana shirts. Year number 2.
Can we have like Banana Tuesdays? Can we get it to be a weekly feature where we know we get the bananas at a certain time of day?
Sure.
Prepared for the banana polo. I love it.
Sure, we can do that, Paul. Anything for you.
I love it so much. Can't wait.
All right. He is Paul Dehner Jr. I've taken up enough of his time as he has precious few days remaining to get ready for training camp 2024 for the Cincinnati Bengals. Opens again on July 24th, open to the general public July 29th. We'll have you completely covered on CINCINNATI.com, but be sure, and I'm sure you will, check out Paul Dehner Jr. and all of his material on The Athletic, as well as one of the best podcasts out there in sports, The Growler, covering all things Cincinnati Bengals. This podcast has been brought to you by our great friends at Prize Picks and the Game Time app, and of course, our friends at CLNS Media. Until next week, you know the phrase, keep that jungle roaring.